Toyota Kata, it may be habit forming. I kind of like that title. So, and Ian already mentioned it. I want to talk about daily practice for scientific thinking and really a scientific thinking culture in the organization. Let's see. It's about a way of working and maybe even more interestingly, a way of working together. I think that's very important these days. Number two, I think of scientific thinking as an ingredient that makes some teams and organizations especially effective. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit more. It sounds kind of big, scientific thinking. It's not the scientific method, it's scientific thinking. And I'd like to convey that a little bit. It's something really anyone can do. And finally, it's an aspect of culture. There's that word everybody's talking about. It's an aspect of culture that you can create through practice. So we studied Toyota's management system. We studied Toyota for a long time. We were just talking about Jeff Liker and all the years of study. But really from 2003 to 2009, we studied Toyota's management approach. Here's what we found. So there is this visible stuff that we benchmarked and tried to replicate for so long. Toyota's results are astonishing, which is why you study Toyota in the first place. So many years of profitability, that does catch your attention. But also all those lean tools and practices that most of you are probably familiar with. When we went back, after you look long enough, you see the less visible stuff, and I've got 2 points here. One is a systematic, scientific way of thinking and acting, and number two, that the managers are kind of the teachers or the coaches teaching their people that way of thinking. And what's interesting is that the visible stuff on top kind of rests on the bottom stuff, which is the foundation for making the stuff on the top work. And if you see it that way, again, you're getting my perspective, but if you see it that way, which one of these would you rather copy? Which one would be the most important one to copy? Their solutions, their tools, or their way of developing solutions and their way of thinking and acting? Obviously, I think the bottom part is the smarter thing to copy. So what it turns out to be, if you will, is navigating with a compass instead of a map. So if you navigate with a map, you know, you've decided how you're going to get where you're going. Whereas if you're navigating with a compass, you know where you want to get, you know the direction, but you have no idea exactly how you're going to get there, and you're going to have to figure out along the way. So scientific thinking is like that, is like navigating with a compass. And it may be the best means we currently have for navigating through complex, dynamic, unpredictable territory toward challenging goals. What is it about Toyota? How do we describe what Toyota's doing? We talk about eliminating waste. It's interesting. I don't think Toyota's actually engaged in eliminating waste, and I don't know, Ray, you could come up here and disagree with me, that'd be fine. But what we saw was people at Toyota working toward a particular objective. We need to save a little time in this process. We need to develop something new, whatever it is. And they work hard to develop, break through the obstacles and work to achieve that goal. And when they look back, they say, look at all the waste we eliminated. And it's true, a lot of waste was eliminated, but it was actually done along the way to a particular goal. So if you will, remember I said it's not the scientific method. This is more like a practical pattern of scientific thinking. This is one anyone can use every day. And the funny thing about it is it spills over into your daily life. You'll end up showing this to your kids. You'll find that it changes the way you go through life. And that's kind of cool. It's not something just for scientists. Scientific thinking is not difficult. It's not our default mode. That's the problem. It's not reserved for scientists, but it's just harder for humans to do because that's not our natural way of going. And that's what the improvement Kata pattern is about. Basically, we've got this threshold of knowledge, and you're going to experiment your way toward the goal, right? And see further. So everybody's talking about using human capability. It's a big topic right now. It sounds nice, but it's not so easy. There's more to it than just saying, hey, remember the 90s? You're a self-directed work team. You're a self-directed work team. How did that go? We backed off that one pretty quickly, didn't we? Yeah. Because there was something missing. So we've all been in the meetings where a problem or a goal is put on the table. And again, my job is to be in these meetings, kind of sit in the back and pay attention and see what's happening. It's a good job. It's an interesting job. And what often happens is immediately people start throwing out solutions to the problem, right? it's actually kind of uncomfortable to have, all of a sudden you're put into uncertainty. We need to get to this goal. We have this problem. Now we're in the gray zone. We're in the uncertain world. So we really would like to get that solved and get there as quickly as possible and get back to a sense of security. So you're in this meeting. Everybody's throwing out ideas about what to do, right? You've got an idea. You've got an idea. I've got an idea. We're arguing for our solution. Who wins that argument? Maybe the loudest, the highest paid, the most fearful person in the room. I don't know. So okay. So now we're going to go out and we're going to do Dave's solution, right? And we go out to the shop floor. Now nothing works right the first time, right? So we go out to the floor, and as soon as that idea doesn't work very well, the rest of the team stand there like this because they had other ideas, right? What do we say? A stupid idea. I told you that wouldn't work. Let's go back and figure out something. So this is this common mode of operation is not yet a good way of using our amazing brain power. The brain power is there. It is truly phenomenal, but it's latent. You have to mobilize it. You have to develop it. You have to mobilize it. You have to channel it. That's the job of the manager, right? Otherwise, we're going to jump to conclusions. So don't argue about the best solution. Argue about the best next experiment, right? It's much simpler. Let's fight. Teams can fight. That's perfectly fine. Let's fight about what the next experiment is. Nobody in the room knows. And the only way to get new information into the room is to try something. We're just, someone said it to me yesterday, everybody in that meeting is just breathing their own exhaust. I thought that was a pretty good way to say it. Here's one, who said that? Anyway, thank you, it was very good. So here's another trick. And again, the managers have to bring this capability out. It's, a lot of times you hear about develop capability or use the people's capability, get out of the way. It's not that simple. You have to kind of make it happen. So you're going out to do an experiment with your team, right? And just before you do the experiment, you turn back to your team and you look them in the eye and you say, why are we doing this? Why are we running this experiment? And invariably, someone on the team will say, to see if this works, to see if the idea works. And then you, as the coach, as the teacher, as the manager, as the supervisor, look at your team and say, oh, we already know it probably won't work. Very few things work the first time out. And your team's going to go, why are we doing this? You say, we're doing this to learn what we need to do to make it work. We're doing this to learn what we need to do to get to our objective. And what I need you guys to do when we go out there and run this experiment is not look at, oh, it failed, isn't that weird? But look at what might we need to do, what might we need to adjust to make this work. And now you've switched on the brains in your team. Now you're using the brains in your team. But it had to be switched on. So it's kind of a different role for managers. It's not being the problem solver. It's not just making the numbers. It's developing the people who then make the numbers for you. And again, it's very much like sports and music. The little league game where the kids are playing and the parent runs in and moves the child aside and says, get out of the way, I can do that. And the police come and it's just not really a good scene, right? Or a coach for a sports team can't play the game. There's no way one coach could play the whole game. You need the whole team. And that's kind of what we were talking about earlier about complex and unpredictable conditions. If you are in those conditions, you kind of need the brain power of the whole team. I think there still are situations where command and control management works. I think there are still businesses where that works and so forth. So I don't think this is necessarily something every business has to do. There are different ways to run a successful business. But if you are in those dynamic, unpredictable conditions, all of a sudden you need the team to play, not just you, the manager, right? So what can the manager do? Well, what can the coach do that's coaching a team? You can only teach them how to play. And the cool thing is, or the interesting thing is, maybe difficult too, you don't know what you're going to face in the future, so you can't teach them solutions. You can only teach them how to play. To see your team advance and be able to do things is extremely satisfying, right? And again, you'll take it home with you. You'll start to operate differently. So one thing about this, the neuroscience is really clear. If you practice 20 minutes a day, that's much better than 2 hours once a week. And so it's also, at the beginning especially, it's practice with coaching. Because when you first practice, what are you going to practice? New habits or your old habits? What are you going to tend to practice? Old habits. Have you ever tried to do something new and you just can't get it, and then someone comes up, and says, you're doing it a little wrong, just do it a little bit differently, and all of a sudden it works, right? Because you're going to practice your existing neural pathways. So it's frequent practice, a little bit every day, with some coaching input, especially at the beginning. Knowing ain't the same as doing. Just benchmarking what another organization is doing is not enough to make change happen. Not because people are hostile, it's physiological. That's how the brain works. Number 2, scientific thinking is a great way to navigate, but it's not our default mode as adults. And number 3, skills, habits, and mindsets are wired in our brain. And number 4, you can practice starter kata with a little coaching to help wire your brain for scientific thinking. It is something just about anyone can learn. And finally, you can also modify an organization's culture this way with managers as the coaches. That's the Numi story that Paul told so nicely yesterday. That's essentially what's going on there. I think it's good to know what's happening.